Hey guys, this is Neil with Catalyst Machine Works, and I'm going to discuss this morning some of the design aspects of this new bird that we are actively tinkering away with. Currently, it's only in CAD form. We haven't started to manufacture anything. The prototypes, they're coming soon. I'm probably going to try and finish up this design by the end of this holiday weekend, and go ahead and get the parts cut for a few prototypes, so myself and team pilots can go and thrash this thing and see what happens. So I'm going to discuss the major design aspects of this and what I'm going for with this thing, what I'm trying to accomplish, and how this, in theory, is going to accomplish those things. So the main, well, I guess one of the main aspects is I wanted to create a design that is highly resilient to damage for your expensive FPV camera and also the HD camera that's going to go up top. Let me go ahead and show you what it looks like with the here we go, with the HD camera up top. Okay. There it goes. I need to get a new computer. It's not keeping up anymore. Anyway, so this is what it looks like with a session up top. All right. Now, the theory here and how we're going to keep these two cameras well protected has to do with TPU and the amazing properties of TPU. That material, the reason that the frame designers use it primarily is, one, it's readily available, and two, it has some pretty incredible properties with regards to crashing. And what happens when you crash is that the material will tend to, it'll move, it'll deform, but it'll bounce back into shape. So it doesn't plastically deform. It doesn't, deform and then stay in this deformed position. It'll sort of pop back into spot. And so I'm using those properties with this assembly. Let me go ahead and hide these guys so we can have a better look at this. Okay, so now how this thing works is it has a very rigid, very strong cage here for the FPV camera, and this is a micro cam in here. So this thing will fit really any size micro cam on the market. And in addition, you can use the ones with the big lenses, like the Eagle camera, for instance. So it's designed for that. And this cage is mounted to the main structure by TPU components, right? So this guy, this other bracket, these two brackets here, these are TPU. This bar will probably be TPU. We may use a material called armadillo, which is unbelievably tough. It just depends. I'm going to try both out. But then this component here, this one in the back, that the assembly hinges on. Let me show you what it looks like. This component is also TPU. I've got a lot of planes and whatnot on here, but this component, this entire component is TPU as well. Then, excuse me, this component that I don't know, I haven't even named this thing yet, whatever this thing is called, that the assembly hinges on, this is also TPU, right? Let me open that up. Okay, so this is TPU as well. Okay, and so yeah, so how it works is that if we crash and and let's say we smash this cage into something, the theory is that all of these components working together are going to deform and just move this cage out of the way. It'll essentially deform, dissipate the forces, and then sort of pop back into place. And of course, we don't want things in the process to be breaking, and that's what crash testing is for. So I've designed it in such a way that, you know, my intuition is telling me that it'll be successful with majority of crashes, and that it'll do what it's supposed to do. So we're going to get out there and crash test it and see what happens. Now, why didn't I go with just a big TPU canopy of some sort up here, right? Okay, and we've considered that, and the reason I didn't go with that is that while a TPU, system to hold the cameras can be effective, I think this is actually going to be more effective, because what I have found is that a TPU structure is really great most of the time. There are those cases where it deforms so much that it'll actually crack the case of the FPV camera, and that can be a problem. And so the theory with this guy is that we now have some of the properties of the aspects of TPU that we're using to our advantage, is that deformation and being able to move the assembly out of the way in a crash. But also we're housing the assembly that the camera is actually sitting in a very tough cage. So that's the theory with that. Now, the other aspect of this machine that I wanted to go after was a super low deck, right? So a fuselage that is very low slung. They just look cool. It looks really awesome, and the less distance you have from the top and bottom plate, the tougher the fuselage is going to be in a crash. And obviously you save a little bit of weight by doing that compared to something with some tall standoffs and all of that. So anyways, the way that this is accomplished, this is 13 millimeters top to bottom, and the way that this is accomplished, there's actually only one way that I was able to pull this off and get it so low slung, is this here. This on the bottom is essentially just a cover plate, right? This is carbon fiber, 1 millimeter thick cover plate. And so if you hide this thing, it's held on with 2 screws, these screws right here. You pull those out, this cover plate is going to come off. Then underneath, you've revealed the video transmitter, which is here, and the RC receiver, which is there, right? And so those are mounted in these, I'm going to call them bays. This is the bottom of the speed controller, 4-in-1 ESC, and this is the bottom of the flight controller. You just use double-sided stick tape and mount them to there. There's plenty of room for these components. This I have modeled up here is a Unify Pro. This is the race version, but it's the big one. It's the new one they came out with, the MMCX. So you can see it's pretty long. It's a big, flat, massive thing, and it fits in here. There's no problems fitting it in here, and of course you got plenty of space for pretty much any receiver you can think of. So one of the concerns that I've heard in our group, the people who have seen this thing, is access to the electronics. I mean, obviously that is really important. We go out and we thrash these things, and the reality is things are going to burn up over time, and things are going to break and whatnot. And you got to get access to these components. So this, the intention of this and the way this thing works is that it gives you easy access. So 2 screws, now you have access to these components. You've got access to the flight controller, not by way of these openings here, but just if you see where it's located, the flight controller is located in the rear of the craft. It's not stacked on top of the ESC, it's not in the middle, it's in the rear. And so just by way of its location, you can see that you can get to it, right? So that's easy to get to. Let me go ahead and put this cover plate back on here, wherever in the hell it is. Here it is. All right. Okay. Okay, so another aspect I'm going to discuss is the arms. Okay, so essentially what this bird is an adaptation of the America line of frames. And so we found through testing, and then obviously when we got it out into the world and people started crashing the hell out of it and doing all that, is that the way that the arms work and the way that the fuselage interfaces with the arms, it just works out really well. A very popular design, and so we're continuing that design in this frame. It really hasn't changed from that. It works the exact same way. So we have the arms here, and if you look at the arm, it's got these, let's hide this thing. It's got a hole and a slot, okay, like that. And so if you break an arm, if you snap one of these arms, all you've got to do is take out this screw, completely remove it, and then just loosen this screw and the arm comes out. It's super fast, super easy to get out of there. And another aspect that makes this thing cool is that we use these carbon fiber arm spacers, and that allows you excuse me, that allows you to get a staggering of the front arms in reference to the rear arms. So you can get the props of the two rear motors up higher than the front, so you can get cleaner air to the rear props and run a little bit more efficiently on those rear props. So that is how that works. That has not changed from the America frames, and it should be very effective. Now, obviously, the battery on this guy is mounted on the top. Okay, and another thing that I noticed people were mentioning is that, wow, why does this top portion look so high up? Why is it sticking up so high? Well, it's not really sticking up higher than any other craft in this size. The reason it looks like it's sticking up so high is because the oops, we're missing a part here. And the reason that it looks like it's sort of protruding up so high in reference to the other parts of the craft is the deck sits so low. So if I actually put a battery on here, this is what a battery looks like. And so you can see that if you compare this to, let's say, an alien or an Armaten, chameleon or rooster or something like that, is that the camera is sitting about the same location as those craft in the same general area. This battery that I've got modeled up here, this is a representation of a, I think it's a 6S 1250 mAh, and so I think that's a pretty kind of a worst case scenario battery. It's a larger battery. The battery is actually held on by two straps instead of one. So you've got a strap here that is running into these two slots that goes around here over the flight controller there. Then, excuse me. Then there is a strap that goes through here, and it goes around the front of the battery. So it's going to be held in nice and tight. Now, okay, so here's another aspect I wanted to discuss, is that the entire front section, by changing out the length of this bar here, will change its angle. And so you can move the FPV camera and the HD camera all at one time just by changing out this bar. Okay, and so if you use a longer or a shorter bar, which it just looks like this, you can change that angle. And so this thing will be able to deviate anywhere from, I think it's about 15 degrees all the way up to 50 degrees. All right. Let me show you what it looks like when we change that angle. Okay, I'm just going to break this mate here. And when we change that angle, this is what happens. Right? So the entire assembly will rotate together. So you can see that. So now if we go all the way up to 50, which is somewhere around here, you can just slide this battery back just a little bit. You're still, on the top of the fuselage here. You're not hanging off the end. And you've got plenty of space. You can get a really decent, significant amount of camera tilt. Alright, so that's how that works. Now in addition, some people want to take and have a different angle on their FPV camera in reference to the HD camera. And this little cage will allow you to do that. So you can actually change the angle of this FPV camera by somewhere around 15 degrees plus or minus in here. So that's how that works. Okay, so I wanted to also discuss the RC antenna for the receiver. The RC antennas is that they are integrated into this TPU component here. There's little holes at the bottom right there that you'll run the antenna up, and then here's your receiver. So you basically can just, if I hide this guy, I'll show you how it's going to work here. Hide this, right? And you just feed them up. There's a little opening. You just feed the two antenna up through here. So pretty easy to do. These antenna, because of their location, are well protected in a crash. I mean, if you crash and roll this thing over, the ground is never actually going to, nothing's ever going to touch these things. So those should work out pretty well. Now I'm also going to come up with some sort of a mount for the crossfire. The crossfire antenna, I think it's called the Mortal T, something like that. I'm going to come up with a mount for that. I haven't done it yet, but I am going to integrate that somehow into here. The next thing I've got to do, which I have not completed yet, is to make a mount for an SMA style FPV antenna. That's going to be in the back, in the rear of the craft. It's going to be some sort of TPU component that holds on to these two standoffs here. So I'm going to do that. There'll also be an option for a TPU mount for an Axis style antenna on the rear of the craft. So that's how that's going to work. We're also going to be selling this guy with a arm brace that goes in the front, probably just one arm brace that you can use in the front that spans this distance. Same scenario as the Loris line of frames and the America frames. There'll be an optional rear brace that you can purchase as an additional accessory. The last thing I'm going to mention is the cameras. So when you purchase this guy, you're going to buy the frame, and then you're going to select what type of HD camera mount you want. And the HD camera mount is going to be sold separate, right? There's going to be, at the beginning, there's going to be two options. What you have here, which is a session mount, and then also a camera option for the to hold the regular size GoPro. So the way that this camera mount is fastened, let me suppress this here. Is there are some captured nuts here. That's what she said. And there's screws that run through the mount and then join the mount to this plate. So it's easy to, since this thing is modular, it's easy to have different HD cameras that you can mount up to the top of this thing, right? So that is that is this design in a nutshell at this point. So I'm excited to give this guy a go and to go ahead and get some prototypes and start crash testing this thing and flying it and tinkering with it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait. We are obviously trying to get heavily into the freestyle market, and we've had a freestyle frame for a while now, the 210R, which has been popular. But we needed to spice things up and move into some new technologies that I've been thinking about. So here we have it. All right, so I'll let you guys know how it goes and how things move along. We're probably at least about 6 weeks off to start shipping this. We've got a lot to do, a lot of work to do. So there you go. Hope this video wasn't too terribly boring.